Welcome, good morning / good afternoon, depending on where you are. I am Steve Lookner. This is Right Side Broadcasting. We're coming with some breaking news today that we just got in a few minutes ago. Steve Bannon, the chief strategist of President Trump, has been removed by President Trump from his position on the National Security Council. Steve Bannon has been removed from his position on the National Security Council. Steve Bannon was one of the principals of the National Security Council. The National Security Council is the main forum where the president discusses with his advisors foreign policy, national security issues, and it was a controversial move by President Trump to put Steve Bannon, a political advisor, on the National Security Council. That is not a common occurrence, but he has been removed today from his role on the National Security Council. Now, we're going to talk a little bit about why this might have been. That to me is one of the big questions that comes up, if not the biggest question. Why is this happening? And I've seen people on TV speculating about some different things. I had some different thoughts about this. We'd like to hear your thoughts about this story as well. So while we're on here covering it, if you'd like, feel free to write in your comments or your questions, your analysis of what's going on. You can write to me either on Twitter. You can direct message me there at Lookner, at Lookner, or email me at steve.lookner@rsbn.tv. Just a heads up as well. In about 45 minutes, 50 minutes from now, at 1:10 p.m. Eastern, President Trump is scheduled to give a press conference with the visiting King Abdullah II of Jordan, Jordan's King Abdullah II. So President Trump himself will be giving a press conference that was already scheduled 50 minutes from now. We will be carrying that live. So we will go from this to that, or we're also been carrying some of the Senate hearings, so we might go from this to the Senate hearings on Judge Gorsuch and then to the president's press conference. But anyways, I have to imagine President Trump will be asked about this at the press conference, or maybe say something about it before he's asked. We'll see. But so that's coming up. We look forward to bringing that to you live. But for now, we're covering this breaking news. Again, Steve Bannon, President Trump's chief status, has been removed from his spot on the National Security Council. Now, I want to read you briefly the best coverage I have seen of this. The person who I believe broke this story, was Jennifer Jacobs from Bloomberg, who I follow on Twitter. I actually like her reporting a lot. And she has a story on Bloomberg site, Jennifer Jacobs does, that's constantly being updated, she said, with new information. So I'm going to read you the latest version of that story. If you want to read it, if you go to Bloomberg and you look up Bannon loses National Security Council role in Trump shakeup, there it is. You can find it. Let me read you, it's a short story, and this is from Jennifer Jacobs. This is what she reported this morning. President Donald Trump reorganized his National Security Council on Wednesday, removing his chief strategist, Stephen Bannon, and downgrading the role of his Homeland Security advisor, Tom Bossert, according to a person familiar with the decision in a regulatory filing. National Security Advisor H.R. McMaster was given responsibility for setting the agenda for meetings of the NSC, or the Homeland Security Council, and was authorized to delegate that authority to Bossert at his discretion, according to the filing. Under the move, the National Intelligence Director, Dan Coats, and the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Marine Corps General Joseph Dunford, are again regular attendees of the NSC's Principals Committee. Bannon, the former executive chairman of Breitbart News, was elevated to the National Security Council's Principals Committee at the beginning of Trump's presidency. The move drew criticism from some members of Congress and Washington's foreign policy establishment. A White House official said that Bannon was placed on the committee in part to monitor Trump's first national security advisor, Michael Flynn, and never attended a meeting. He's no longer needed with McMaster in charge of the official said. Trump fired Flynn, he's no longer needed with McMaster in charge of the council, the official said. Trump fired Flynn on February 13th for not disclosing to the president or to the vice president, Mike Pence, the extent of his conversations with Russia's ambassador to the U.S. and Sergei Kislyak before Trump's inauguration. So again, that is from Jennifer Jacobs, who's been reporting on the story from Bloomberg. But In terms of why this happened, so we do have an explanation from the White House why this happened. Now, some might say this is spin and not the real reason, but the official White House explanation, let me read this paragraph again from the Jennifer Jacobs story. A White House official said that Bannon was placed on the committee in part to monitor Trump's first national security advisor, Michael Flynn, and never attended a meeting. He's no longer needed with McMaster in charge of the council, the official said. So what the White House is saying is that the whole reason Bannon was, well, not the whole reason, but a part of the reason Bannon was put on the National Security Council was to monitor Michael Flynn. I'm not sure exactly what monitor means. Help, keep an eye on Michael Flynn. And then once Michael Flynn wasn't there anymore, there was no need or not such a need for Stephen Bannon to be there. And also what they said in this paragraph was Stephen Bannon had never attended a meeting of the National Security Council. So White House, at least publicly, is saying it's not a big deal. He wasn't really that involved with it anyway. Now, we might wonder, though, is that the reason why he was removed? Is there perhaps a different reason? A couple thoughts I had when I first heard this news. Let me throw these thoughts out there. One thought I had is, President Trump's poll numbers have been low lately, and his approval ratings, and perhaps this could be some kind of attempt to respond to the lower poll numbers, or to respond to maybe some of his critics, or just try to get more of a unification behind him in the country as he moves forward and tries to pass his legislation. Obviously, if President Trump is trying to pass legislation, but a lot of the country is not in support of him, it doesn't think he's doing a good job, that's going to make it tougher. So that's one idea. Now, I will say President Trump is not known to be somebody who caves in or anything like that. But at the same time, perhaps this is something he does that he thinks will help him down the road. I'm just throwing something out here. So that's one thought I had. Another thought I had is just that there's some displeasure with Steve Bannon going on. Maybe there's a world in which President Trump thinks, President Steve Bannon is doing too many things. One idea would be he's not pleased with Bannon's work at the National Security Council. Another idea would just be that he wants Bannon to focus more on legislative stuff and doesn't want him to be dealing with National Security Council stuff. Maybe President Trump thinks the key stuff now to focus on is trying to get laws passed, and he doesn't want Steve Bannon doing that National Security Council stuff. That's another reason. So there's all kinds of reasons we could think of as to why this happened. A lot of plausible reasons we could think of. At this point, not sure what. We have the White House explanation, but there are certainly other reasons we could think of. Maybe President Trump will say something more about it today. But I'd like to hear more from you we'd like to hear what you think. Do you have a particular idea of why President Trump removed Steve Bannon from the National Security Council? Are you upset with this? Are you okay with it? Are you happy about it? Let me know. Write to me while we're on the air. You can direct message me on Twitter at Lookner, at Lookner. Or email me at steve.lookner@rsbn.tv. Let me check here and see if we have any messages so far. I have some things. Let me see if they're relevant to this broadcast. So Jaw Nay B wrote in, maybe done what he was there for, disagreement on military action. So you proposed two different possibilities for why Steve Bannon was removed, John A.B. One you say is maybe done what he was there for. That sounds like something like the official reason the White House is giving. Certainly possible. Another thing you say is disagreement on military action, ? Now, this raises this whole idea, one possibility here is perhaps something's being cooked up on North Korea. We've heard some very tough language from the administration about North Korea in the last couple of weeks. And just yesterday, North Korea test fired a missile, and Secretary of State Tillerson released a very short statement about that, basically saying we're done talking about North Korea. And I saw some speculation online that some people thought, hey, is this a sign that some kind of action against North Korea is coming? So maybe there's some disagreement on foreign policy between President Trump and Steve Bannon, and that could be a reason for him to be removed from the National Security Council. Don't know, but thank you for your suggestion, John A.B. This is a comment we got in from Berengaria. Berengaria writes, "We need Steve Bannon. If he is removed to satisfy the Obama leftovers, this does not bode well for America." So, Berengaria, you think that if, we don't know if this was the case, but if it was the case that Steve Bannon was removed in part or completely to satisfy people complaining about him, you find that very problematic. You say if he is removed to satisfy the Obama leftovers. Now, as I said before, I could see a world in which President Trump removes Steve Bannon from the National Security Council to make satisfy some people who are against him, with the hope of maybe making it easier to pass legislation in the future, so for a long-term beneficial reason. But we're just throwing ideas out here. One other point relevant to what you said, Berengaria, about a bit relevant to what we were talking about here, is I did see somebody online with an interesting tweet. In the tweet, I can't remember who said it, but somebody said something like, look, just because Steve Bannon is removed from the National Security Council doesn't mean he can't advise on foreign policy. I mean, and the person said Jared Kushner is one of supposedly President Trump's foremost advisors on foreign policy, and he's not on the National Security Council. So removing him from the National Security Council doesn't mean President Trump can't talk about foreign policy with him. So there's that. Okay, let me get back to more of your comments. Thank you, Berengaria, for writing in. Let's see. This is from Gonzoville. Gonzoville writes in, Gonzoville, I'll get back to your comment here. Maybe with North Korea and Syria heating up, the NSC needs to be more focused on military issues. Bannon isn't experienced in that area. That's an interesting thought, Gonzoville, is that, not only North Korea, the stuff has been heating up there, but with Syria, we have this chemical weapons attack yesterday, reportedly by the Syrian government. And also we have that going on, but we also have, remember, more American troops going to the Middle East, to Iraq and Syria, to lead help contribute to the assault on Mosul and the coming assault on Raqqa, the ISIS stronghold. And I believe Raqqa is in Syria, isn't it? Isn't Raqqa in Syria? Let me check up. Raqqa is in Syria. So, with that stuff coming on, that's more military activity. And maybe, Gonzoville, you're right in that there's more military activity going on and being anticipated, and perhaps that's not what Steve Bannon really does, and there might not be such a need for him to be there at this point. So, who knows? Interesting suggestion. Thanks for writing in. This is from NY Mike 2S. NY Mike 2S says, I guess I'm missing something. I think it's routine and he's just not needed there. Wasn't it to temporarily oversee Flynn? I don't know. So, Mike 2S, that's certainly a possibility. The White House did say that. But I do think, whenever things happen like this in the White House, whoever is president does something, there's always a chance that you're doing it for a different reason than the overt reason they're saying. And another thing here is, I do think that when President Trump removes Steve Bannon, it's a bit of an embarrassment for Steve Bannon. Whether it should be or not is besides the point. I think it lowers his prestige some. When it's done in this way where it's not like they had a press conference and they said look, Steve Bannon has been awesome in the National Security Council, but we really need him for the legislature, so we're taking him off. It kind of just happens and is thrown out there. So it doesn't look great for Steve Bannon and his influence. Now, maybe his influence is just the same and Donald Trump is perfectly happy with him. It's just there's a way this looks which is consistent with perhaps President Trump not being happy with him it's consistent with it not being all well and good and there being some certain staffing issues, or President Trump not being happy with how the White House is functioning and maybe he wants Steve Bannon to focus more on non-national security stuff. So I think it's at least worth speculating here. But NY Mike 2S, you could be right. It could just be that his work there is done. If it is that his work there is done, I do think that there was a better way of letting this be known. Now, maybe it got leaked, of course. Maybe it got leaked before the president was going to make it known. But the way it came out is just to, to me, if you're going to remove Steve Bannon from the National Security Council and you want to not have it be like embarrassing for him or seen as like lessening of his prestige, you really got to make an effort at the White House to like announce it in this orchestrated way and like explain yourself rather than having it leak out in the press and like have like some unnamed official giving a quote about it. So, but you could be right. So we're just speculating here, and I think it's healthy to speculate on something like this. To remind you, by the way, President Trump is going to be giving a press conference with King Abdullah of Jordan, who's visiting the White House today, King Abdullah II of Jordan. And that's going to be happening in about a half hour from now at 1:10 p.m. Eastern Time. We will be bringing that to you live. So if we're still on the air about 20 minutes from now, we might switch over to that stream. I'm not sure, but we'll keep you informed. But just so you know, we'll be covering that live. And hopefully we'll hear some more about the Steve Bannon being removed from the National Security Council. Maybe President Trump will say something about it in the press conference. We'll see. We'll see what happens. And I also should give you a heads up. We're located in Auburn, Alabama. That's where our studio is. Weather is very, very, very bad today. They've closed schools today. There's a ton of rain. You might hear some thunder in the background. I can hear the thunder in the room right now. So if at some point today we go off the air for a bit all of a sudden, it very well might be because there were some communications issues, I think a few months ago there was a tornado near here and a telephone pole went down. So, I don't know if it'll knock out some of our internet or something like that. We'll see. We'll do our best to stay on the air all day, covering the events that are on the air today. We also are going to do our best to cover the Senate hearings today, which I believe are on another feed. I might be wrong about that, but I think that feed is still on. So if you check our Right Side Broadcasting Facebook page, we're running we're covering the Senate hearings and showing you that footage from the Senate of that. So thanks for joining us. We're covering all these things for you today. But for now, on this broadcast, we are covering the breaking news that Steve Bannon, the chief strategist for President Trump, has been removed from the National Security Council. This just came out within the hour. We're reporting that to you. And we are taking some of your comments on it. We're speculating here as to why this might have happened. We have the White House saying one thing, but maybe there are other reasons involved. We'd love to get your feedback. So if you want to write in, either direct message me on Twitter at Lookner, at Lookner, or email me at steve.lookner@rsbn.tv. Would love to hear from you. Speaking of email, I should check my email just to make sure I haven't ignored any of your emails. So let me pull that up. Let's see here. All right, I'm caught up on emails, and am I caught up on Twitter? Because I want to actually check my Twitter feed. That's what I want to do next. I also want to say, we're not sure yet if Sean Spicer is having a White House press briefing today. It's possible he's not, because some days when President Trump has events, they don't do a White House press briefing. So today, President Trump has this press conference coming up in a half an hour that we're going to bring you live. So it's possible that Sean Spicer is not having a press briefing today because President Trump is having a press conference. If he does have a televised press briefing, we'll bring it to you. But as of right now, we believe he's not. Oh, no presser today. So there is no Sean Spicer press briefing today. Thank you, Jake. There is instead the President Trump press conference. This will happen in half an hour. We'll bring it to you live here at Right Side Broadcasting. I should also just throw in here, thank you to the moderators for moderating all of the chat rooms on YouTube for all the events today. And speaking of the chat, if you like our coverage and you'd like us, you like the way we cover the news and like the way we cover the president's rallies and like that we bring you an alternative to the mainstream media, we hope you consider donating to us because your donations keep us on the air. Without your donations, we would not be on the air. We don't take donations from like big donors who want to control what we say. We want to stay independent for you. So very easy way to donate is if you go in, if you're watching this live and you see the chat room next to the broadcast, just click at the dollar sign up at the bottom of the chat room. Click on that dollar sign. It makes it very easy to donate. Every donation helps, every single one, no matter what the amount. And also, if you want another way to donate, is go to rsbn.tv/donate, rsbn.tv/donate. Yes, I'm peeking outside.
Severe thunderstorm warning has just been issued for Lee County.
Mhm.
Power outage has been reported in the area, so in case the power goes out.
I will repeat that, yes. So I just got an update that we're in Lee County, and a severe thunderstorm warning has been issued, and also supposedly some power went out in our county. So if we do go off the air, it could very well be a power issue. If we go off the air due to power, we'll tweet it or something, because I think our phones will still work and we can get on Twitter through our phones. So if you want to follow us for updates on Twitter, follow us at RSB Network, at RSB Network. My Twitter, by the way, is at Lookner if you want to follow me there, at LOOKNER. Or write to me. Let me know what you're thinking about this Steve Bannon thing. But we hope our power stays on so we can cover the news today, and we can keep bringing you the Senate hearings, and we can bring you the President Trump press conference, which is coming up in a half an hour. We have Captain Chris P. Bacon writes in, Bannon said in a statement, Susan Rice operationalized the NSC during the last administration. I was put on to ensure that it was de-operationalized. General McMaster has returned the NSC to its proper function. So, and I'd seen a mention of this. Thank you, Chris, for sending that in, that statement by Steve Bannon. I just want to be a good journalist, by the way, Chris Bacon, and I want to just double check something here. Because I saw some news people reporting this morning, so I'm really glad you reminded me of it. So let me do this real quick here. I'm trying to find... When you put in the word Bannon on an iPad, it seems to want to spell check it to something else. Yes, and so I'll read that statement again. I want to see if it was you had told me there was a statement. I want to get some confirmation on it before reporting it on as a statement. But yes, the statement that's being reported from Steve Bannon that our viewer just reported to us as well, Chris P. Bacon. Susan Rice operationalized the NSC during the last administration. I was put on to ensure it was de-operationalized. General McMaster has returned the NSC to its proper function. Now, from that quote from Steve Bannon, that statement, it's interesting. One question I'd have about that is what exactly does operationalized mean and de-operationalized mean? I'm not sure. We could speculate on that. And so what Steve Bannon is basically saying, though, is I was put on the NSC to undo some work that Susan Rice did, and now that is done. And so we're going to leave it to General McMaster to run the National Security Advisor to run the National Security Council now. And certainly that is a plausible reason for Steve Bannon to not be in the National Security Council anymore. However, as I said before, I think it's certainly reasonable to speculate about other possibilities because, as we know from the history of America, what the White House says is the case is not always the exact case. And that's just kind of the history of government in this country and lots of other countries as well. So I think it's worth it to speculate. And also because of the way this was announced, I think it's a little fishy to think that there's not something else going on there, but I might be wrong. I'm happy to admit I might be wrong. But I'd love to hear what you think about this. So feel free to disagree with me or give your theories and all that stuff. Would love to hear from you while we're on the air here. And I wanted to also check my email and also check Twitter. I was going to check Twitter just to see if there were any updates there. What did Jennifer Jacobs say? Oh, also, this is something that Jennifer Jacobs reported. So there was a story on the Drudge Report at some point saying that Steve Bannon had lost his security clearance. Jennifer Jacobs from Bloomberg says that report is false and that Steve Bannon still has his security clearance. Let's see here. Yes. Oh, are we going to go to the press conference thing in 10 minutes? We're just going to go back to the Senate in 10 minutes? Oh, okay. So we're going to go back to the Senate footage, Senate is the Senate footage currently running right now? Yes. Okay, cool. All right. So just so you're aware, everyone out there, sorry, I had to get this message from Jake. In about 10 minutes, we're going to wrap up this stream, and we're going to, a few minutes after that, go to the live coverage of President Trump's press briefing. Also, when this stream ends, if you want to, between this stream and the press briefing, we are concurrently showing the Senate debate on Neil Gorsuch. So if you want to, when this stream ends, you can check out, maybe pull up a couple windows. Pull up this window, and then when this ends, you can have the window with the Neil Gorsuch debate on right side, and you could have in the Senate, and you could have the window for the stream upcoming of President Trump's press briefing. Let's see here. And I think now I think what's going to happen is you might wonder, well, are you doing a pre-show and post-show for the press briefing? We might not be, just because of the logistics of today, which is our logistics are kind of messed up because certain people who would be in the office are working from home because of the crazy weather and the thunder out and everything. So if there is no post-show for the press briefing like we usually do, it's not because we don't like to do it anymore. We love to do it. It's just because of a weather kind of thing. So we'll tweet out something about that as well. But we have a few more minutes here to talk about this story live, and would love to hear your thoughts. Appreciate your thoughts so far.